Okay, with that being said now, I want to talk about a sound argument. What is a sound argument? A sound argument is the strongest argument you can possibly have. In other words, we have three acts of the mind we've been saying all along in logic. You've got your simple apprehension where you define terms, you got your judgment where you make propositions, and you got your reasoning where you make inferences, okay? When you get all those acts of the mind right, each part is correct, each part is perfect, if you will. When you do all that, you get a sound argument, an argument that's the strongest argument you can possibly have. Let me show you what I mean. A sound argument is just one that's just think of it as rock solid, established, where the conclusion is necessarily true, and so on. There are three parts to having a sound argument, and it corresponds with the three acts of the mind. You got your first part, the second part, the third part. That is, you got to have in the first part clear terms. You want your terms to be well defined. You have good definitions. Your terms, your meanings are consistent throughout the argument. So clear terms is the first thing you have to have. The second thing you have to have for a sound argument are true premises. So you want your terms to be clear, you want your premises to be true, and then you want the third part, your reasoning to be valid. You want valid reasoning. So argumentation is actually quite simple. You just have to get three things right. Okay? You got to get your terms clear, you got to get you want your propositions to be true, and you want your reasoning to be valid. If you get all three of these things correct, then you have what's called a sound argument, one that's undeniable, one that establishes the conclusion in a conclusive way. There's no getting around it, whether you like it or not. You've got all three of these elements. When you have all three of these, your argument is just simply as rock solid as it can be. There's no way around it. And by the same token, when you want to criticize an argument, there are really only three ways to criticize an argument. Either the terms aren't clear, right? Or one of the premises is false, and maybe one or both of the premises is false, or that the reasoning is invalid. Okay? You can only mess up, just like you got to get three things right, you can only mess up an argument in three ways. Okay? You could have unclear terms, you could have false premises, and you could have invalid reasoning. So that's kind of nice to know that whenever you want to oppose an argument, you have to just find a fault in one of these three areas. And obviously, it could be more than one fault, right? You could mess up on all three. But the point here, though, is that in order to have a sound argument, you have to have each one of these. It doesn't do any good to have valid reasoning if your premises aren't true, or to have clear terms and true premises if your reasoning is invalid. No, you got to have each and every one of these. We call these necessary. These are necessary conditions. Taken together, they're sufficient. But you have to have each one of these. You can't be missing a one. So to oppose an argument, you need to only find a flaw in one of these three areas. Maybe the terms aren't clear. Maybe the premises aren't true. Maybe the reasoning is invalid. There are only three ways to attack an argument. Okay? So this is very helpful, I think. In order to know what a solid argument looks like, what a sound argument is for your own use and to formulate the strongest arguments that you can, which is the whole point of logic. And on the flip side of that, how to criticize, how to critique other arguments. You just boil it down to three main areas. Either you find some unclear meaning in the term, either you find one of the premises to be false, or you find that the reasoning is invalid. So there are only three ways to critique an argument. And that is very helpful in a practical sense. Okay? So this is what a sound argument is. And it's very important to know, because this is the whole goal of logic, is to establish the best argument that you possibly can.